the work of an Iowa-based organization, Bailing Out Benji, kind of helped spark this investigation. Can you tell me about that?
That resolution filed in King County Superior Court requires the company to pay the state $3.75 million with interest.
Bailing Out Benji regularly looks through these records of dogs' movement from state to state.
Bailing Out Benji
played a key part in unraveling a nationwide puppy scheme.
Bailing Out Benji,
an organization that's been working across the country to stop the pipeline of puppy mill breeders.
Bailing Out Benji.
I will use my voice because they don't have one, and I will keep doing it until there are no more puppy mill dogs.
Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Bailing Out Benji's podcast, Truth, Lies, and Puppy Mills. It's just Jelaine here to start things off today. This will be the second part of our Q&A episode. So we had so many wonderful questions sent in that we wanted to have time to thoughtfully answer each question. So we ended up breaking them into 2 episodes. Last week you heard part 1. This week, you're here for part 2. Thank you for coming back for part 2 and enjoy these questions.
With programs like the Canine Care Program that is leading to breeders providing better living conditions and better care and environments for their animals, their breeding animals and their puppies, has the mission of Bailing Out Benji changed at all as far as ending puppy mills? For example, puppy mills have historically always seemed to be defined not only as a large-scale commercial breeding operation, but also one that provided neglectful and/or inhumane conditions for and treatment of their animals. So if breeders are now still large-scale, but are providing more humane treatment and care for their animals, are they still considered a puppy mill? Is Bailing Out Benji still looking at trying to shut them down? How do you reconcile the better breeding conditions being provided, but still being large-scale breeders, and how that goes with the mission of Bailing Out Benji to end puppy mills?
That is
Sounds like it starts with our definition of what is a puppy mill.
Yeah. Right. And I think that is where people are the most confused, because we all say we agree on the definition of puppy mills, right? In our space, a lot of people are like, it is a breeding facility that is inhumane. The dogs are in cages. Like, everyone has their picture of a puppy mill. But then the minute we add a little nuance, people kind of lose their minds a bit. And I think that for us, we did always equate USDA to puppy mill. And that is because we were looking at pieces of paper and we were looking at standards on the federal level. The standards are horrific. So USDA licensed breeders automatically just have to meet the bare minimum. We were working under the assumption that everyone was working at the bare minimum because that's all they had to do. I mean, and truly, I think that's what most people think in this space, because the USDA has horrifically low standards that need updated. Like, we can all agree they need updated. Yeah. I think people in this space are working under the assumption that breeders are getting that license so they don't have to do better. When what we're really seeing is that the breeders that don't want to do better are operating without a license.
Right.
We're filing complaints. We're finding them. And I don't want to say the ones who don't want to do better necessarily, but it is much easier to be off the radar.
Yeah.
In this day and age with the internet, it is easier to be off the radar.
No one has eyes on your facility. You can do whatever you want.
That USDA license equals puppy mills was one of the weirdest things I had to wrestle with when I came into, as somebody who hadn't been like pre-trained that was the equation. Like, that made no sense. Like, if I want to be not held accountable, I wouldn't get a license, period. So why does the fact that I went out of my way to get a license mean that I'm automatically awful? Like, that to me, like, that just logically did not make sense. And then I get it now, saying like, well, we're going to assume that because you only have to do the bare minimum, that's all you're going to do. But even that sounds weird to me, because again, we live in a society where there are bare minimum rules, and we see people all around us going above and beyond the bare minimum rules. So like, why would we assume an entire population of people is
Right.
always doing bad?
And I think that the access to information is an important piece of this. And so when you're looking at the history of the USDA, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You're either mad at the inspectors for allowing kennels to exist while they're giving them lots of violations, i.e. people like Daniel Gingrich, or you're mad at inspectors when you don't see any violations. And then you're like, well, clearly you're getting paid. And like that's the thought process there. It's like, well, if they have a bunch of violations, how dare you keep them open? Why aren't you shutting them down? And when they're clean, we perceive that to still be guilty, but you're just getting away with something. Like, I think
and no one in this space could imagine a breeder that actually had a clean inspection.
I don't want to say no one could have a but that's, I just, yeah, it is weird. And when you're looking at licensing, we've talked about it before, some states, 3 dogs to be licensed, 4, 5, like these, licensing doesn't necessarily equate humane care or equate to the puppy mill industry. And I think that we had a large part in putting out confusing messaging for many years because we didn't allow ourselves to fully understand all of the nuances. We were really in one train of thought along with our colleagues. We were in a silo. And so now we're trying to at least make room for nuance. And so the question being one of Rachel's questions about large scale kennels. Do we believe that large scale kennels are puppy mills? Because that is one definition of how they could be. There are some places out there, you can see them, some organizations who believe if you have a USDA license, if you are a commercial kennel, you are a puppy mill. And they have no gray area there. That's what they believe, and that's where they will go. Alexis and I have been in kennels where, so it's funny, when we go on these tours, we don't Google the breeders before. We are not looking up their inspection history beforehand. We go in completely blank. We are in a community with usually a high population of kennels. And so we just know we're driving to someone's farm. We don't necessarily care ahead of time. But then after, we decide to look. So we see it with fresh eyes. We are meeting these people with first names and last names. Like we get to know each other when we're there. But we are seeing everything as a customer would or as an inspector would, depending on how the breeder wants to treat us when we're there. And so we're seeing things with an open mind, just completely, with no baggage. And then after our tours, we go and we look in our database and we see how many dogs did they have? How many violations, if any, did they have? Where do they sell? And the how many dogs did they have always surprises us. Because when we are there, we are seeing the entire facility. They're not hiding dogs. Like I know a lot of people want to, again, you don't trust what you don't understand. So they want to believe that we are being misled. But in these facilities, we are often shocked afterwards coming home and seeing that they did have 50 adult dogs on their property. They may have had 75 adult dogs on their property, but we didn't smell 75 dogs. We didn't hear 75 dogs. They're running around the play yards. They're playing with toys in their kennels. It's not comfortable to talk about, but even with 75 breeding dogs, like I'm not going to call you a puppy mill because of that number, because the stuff we don't see on inspection records are how many volunteers they have, family members they have, we'll say, taking care of the dogs, how many employees they have. None of that is reflected. So even when there's a facility in Minnesota with 1,000 dogs, I think that's cruel and inhumane, and you shouldn't have 1,000 dogs, but they could have 500 employees for all I know. I don't see that on a piece of paper. And so I think that our mission hasn't changed, but the way we are seeing things gives us a deeper perspective so we can better, again, find those point areas, those problem areas, and try to fix them that way. It's not as easy as just saying this distinction of people is bad and we are good because we're on this side and everyone else can pick a lane. So
it's easy, but it's not helpful to ending the problem.
And the easy is what people want. And I know that. And it's just, you can't lead with easy.
And if your definition of a puppy mill is a commercial breeder or a USDA licensed breeder, then yes, but that's not, we are wanting to put an end to harmful breeding, not all commercial breeding. So when we talk about like, has our mission changed? Because of how we define puppy mill, our mission is not to end commercial breeding. We don't think that it should be impossible for anyone to buy a dog, full stop.
Right.
Whereas some organizations, that is their trajectory.
Yeah.
Also, just if you focus on USDA and say a commercial breeder is a puppy mill, that leaves out a lot of unlicensed people and a lot of people that maybe are small scale, keeping their dogs in homes, and they could be puppy mills too. So I think it confuses the public, and like if they are the puppy buying public, it might mislead them to somewhere that is also still inhumane.
Right.
So,
and I think it goes to that binary thinking, right? And you can't really advise consumers or sway the buying market if you've got that binary. Well, if you buy anyway, you're bad.
Yeah.
Or if you buy in a pet store, you're bad. Or if you buy online, you're bad. Like we keep saying what people should not do as consumers, but we're not helping them with what they should be doing. And I think that's a part of that shame and blame part of our society that we all kind of live in sometimes.
Overall, mission's not really changed, just trying to get more perspective.
I mean, really, the only thing that's changed is our research has widened.
Yeah,
really.
Which everyone should be doing.
We're still protesting. We're still educating. We're still like
more complex than has previously been represented. Yeah.
So all I would add is we're still doing everything. Our teams are still out there protesting pet stores in their community. They're still educating the tabling events. Our website still is the resource for people to come to for education.
Yeah.
And like we just kind of mentioned, our research has broadened. That's the only real change, is that now we are not pinhole focused on one aspect of how people sell. We're looking at the entire industry and trying to find a roadmap to some kind of solution.
Yes.
And trying to like have that integrity so that people will trust us, because if you do paint the whole thing with a broad brush, you kind of lose some of that trust from the public. Like you said, like they don't know, like now we're misleading people, like who can I trust, who I can't trust. And like we instruct, when you talk about people protesting pet stores, we tell our volunteers, learn about the pet store first. Do not just go stand out in front with a sign if you don't know where are they getting their puppies from. Don't tell people they're buying from puppy mills if you don't know they're buying from puppy mills.
Yeah.
Because we want to maintain that integrity so people know when we say something
we mean it.
that we've done the legwork to know what we're talking about, and we're not just saying, well, because they have this license, they must be a puppy. Like, no, we have receipts to back up what we're telling you.
And it truly does help in the room with lawmakers. Like if that's your goal, if you want to work on ordinances, if you want to work on bills regarding breeding, going in to these rooms with that open mind and with that unbiased way of thinking really helps in the conversation. Lawmakers don't want to introduce a bill that's going to be fought and that they have to drag through this whole chain. Like they really want a bill that people support and that their community supports. The first thing you can do is try to work with the other side, quote unquote, to talk about these issues, or see, is there a bill that maybe we can agree on as first steps to getting towards some kind of solution. Because if we're constantly fighting each other, the lawmakers are just forced to pick a side.
Yeah.
And then everything becomes a side after that. There's no real path for nice communication or productive communication.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned too, like with filing complaints, you mentioned earlier, instead of just saying, we know this breeder is selling underage dogs, go get them. We're providing the evidence. We're coming with the documentation of dates and specific animals and specific circumstances. So it gives us that more credibility. We're trying to be a partner to that agency. Same thing with lawmakers. We're trying to say, we want this. We understand the consequence for this group. We've taken that into consideration. We want to try to find a way to make this work on all sides. And yeah, I like it.
Honestly, it's great. And we have so many complaints to file. And we've got like this queue where we're slowly working through it because we can't flood these systems. That's the other hard part, is like we are sitting on an arsenal of unlicensed breeder information, and we're working through it while trying to file complaints that are meaningful and that will be followed up on without burdening the state of Missouri and their 3 to 5 state inspectors, right? Like it's so hard because we also have to recognize that these departments are burdened.
Yeah.
So we also have to weigh behind the scenes, who are we filing complaints on
Mm-hmm.
based on severity, based on state, sometimes based on, oh God, we filed way too many in Iowa lately, let's focus somewhere else for a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, thanks, Rachel. That's kind of little pieces of all of it.
Yeah.
Hey all, Jelaine here. I'm popping in for a second to read questions for Cindy. Cindy asked, during podcast episode 16, interview with Devon, he said the buildings the dogs live in are air conditioned, even though his house is not. Since electricity and air conditioning are not part of the Amish lifestyle, why is it okay for the dogs' buildings to be air conditioned?
I really love that question because I think that it kind of touches on the stereotypes that people believe about Amish culture.
I have the same question. So yeah, I'm glad it was asked as well.
Yeah. So it goes back to that not all phrase we've been saying. Not all communities operate the same way or are able to operate the same way. We are saying Amish like it's one thing. It would be like saying Americans is one thing, right? Or Christians are one thing. Like, so we're already viewing their community as a monolith with one set of rules that they follow. But really it's church-based. And there can be hundreds of churches in a state, like in a community. I don't want to say one little county, but it could be several blocks, or gosh, how do I want to say it? It could be several blocks wide in a community and they go to one church, but a mile over it's a different church and they might have different rules. And so they kind of vote on these things and they vote on what's allowed. So even inside of Devon and Marietta's home, they don't have electricity in the sense that we do. However, they were granted a variance through their church to have a fax machine in the office part of their home. That has to be the farthest away from their sleeping quarters. It's a really weird part of it. And so if they were to do an add-on and that room was no longer the furthest room away, they would either have to completely reinstall the electricity part of the fax machine or just get rid of it and not do it. So it's it's just interesting. It's a part of the world we're not used to. But that is why when we're walking into some of these kennels, they're able to have air conditioning and lighting. And I do want to note, and we could talk about this a little more, but because they don't have access to electricity in the way that we do, they're very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they come up with ideas, really innovative ideas. But yeah, they have to be innovative because of their lack of technology. So like the lighting in the buildings, they're using these big like open sunroof looking things that have metal to kind of make the building lighter, like the sun is reflecting off of it. And I don't know if you want to talk about any of the other things we saw that were very like transformative because they don't have access to technology.
I guess I don't know, like magnets use like for the doors, but like I guess that's not really technology. That's just science.
It's just something we don't see. But with the lack of technology, they use the magnets.
So
what do the magnets do?
I think it's just the latching of the doors that the dogs come in and out of the kennel is how they keep them closed.
So they have like either a remote for every single kennel door, or they have like a panel on a wall. And so like when it's time to clean, they can make sure all the dogs are out in the play yards and they can shut every door and then they can clean without concern that a dog is going to come in and be, introduced to whatever those cleaning things are. Or vice versa. If it's nighttime and you want the dogs to be inside, they can lock all of the doors at once after making sure everybody's out of the play yards.
Cool.
So, and that's different than other facilities because dogs can usually come and go, or they're just stuck inside. And so this is kind of a safety measure.
Excellent.
Do you have any other questions about?
I don't think so. I had a lot going into that episode, but most of them Devon was really good about answering kind of within the episode itself. So, but those kinds of questions, like you said, it's the stereotype. It's what we think we know about a culture. And so people have those questions. And I've seen people post things like that, like an Amish breeder could never be ethical because they don't allow electricity. Like, but that it just shows you don't understand
or taking the time to
Amish.
ask the questions or create an environment
Right.
where these conversations can be had. I also didn't know, like, I think my first Indiana trip, Damon and Maria did explain like the technology use, because like my perception of things was like, oh, the Amish can't use technology as long as like it's not theirs. Like that's what I grew up knowing. So when they explained like the different, like, oh, it's like certain permissions, they can use it in certain ways, I was like, oh, well, I didn't know that. That doesn't get talked about at all. So it's definitely important to be having these conversations and creating the space that we can have open conversation about it.
Thanks for the question. That was a good one.
Do you think that the animal world, meaning rescues, breeders, advocates, lawmakers, could come to an agreement on how to enhance transparency within the industry? This is more of a multi-question question. How do you think that would look for online sellers? And do you think it could be done without having to rewrite laws, so it's in the confine of what we have now as far as our laws are written?
Wow, that's a big question.
Big question. And I will say, behind the scenes, there are a lot of big industry players, big organizations, and people like us who are talking in rooms that you can't see. And I don't mean that in like a shady way.
Yeah.
I just mean there are people from both sides. Again, look at our last year and a half journey, right? There are people from both sides who are trying to come together in a place where we can have conversations that are fruitful. Again, we're coming to the table knowing we don't agree on everything, but what's on the table that we agree on, and humane care is one of them. Again, we're all coming to the table for different reasons. We all have different motivations, but I think that work is already starting a little bit. But there's the concern of we don't trust each other. We don't feel safe in certain spaces or rooms. And how can we, on the high level, expand that so more people feel comfortable talking about these issues is important. But that trickles down to like our teams and how we're all treating each other in public and in rooms that we're not in. So in the last year and a half, when we've had a lot of anger and animosity and confusion and questions coming at us, instead of those organizations who had those questions coming to us directly, talking about them in text threads and messages that we know, like, that's not helpful. So how can we have big conversations together and lead this? That's what we're trying to do. And I think that's what we're doing every week with our podcast. We're rarely talking about popular topics.
No.
Yeah, that's a big question.
That's a big question. I mean, I think you hit it on the head. Like, there are people out there trying, whether these conversations are public or not. But also there's a lot of complex relationships out there that also don't always get advertised to the public. Like, we're making efforts to be able to have these conversations and to create safe environments, and hope that other people decide to do so as well. Or if not, like, we're just going to continue doing what we're doing, continue having these conversations, and continue working with people that want to further the same goals and future that we want, which is ending the puppy mill industry, whether that's online, in stores, individual.
And I think it's important to note too, over the last year and a half, through our field research, people have given us tips. They've given us perspective, and they have helped us. I don't want to say they've helped us file complaints, but they have alerted us to situations that they can't handle from their side or their lens. And they're like, hey, maybe you should look at it from this angle. Or we also have concerns about transports. Do you know the difference between transport companies or individual versus license and all of this stuff? Like, there are people on the pet industry side, the breeding industry side, that want to give us perspective and that nuanced information, so then we can kind of see that spectrum, the spectrum of care, the spectrum of running a business, all of that. It's really helpful, and all of that is through trust. And there are people who care about transparency as much as we do on that side as well. It looks different on their end, but I do think that there are ways, like turning it to that online question, the online part of the question, I think there are ways that we can deal with transparency online. Some websites like marketplaces will tell you exactly who the breeder is, their website, their phone number, whatever, like under the guise of transparency, but there's no information about violations or have they had licenses, revoked or animals seized. Like there are active sellers that have done harm.
Yeah.
And no transparency is on their seller pages, even if it looks like it.
And no verification, like I guess sometimes a lack of responsibility on that marketplace to verify information or verify who's selling and making sure it's accurate.
But I think we're working towards a place where there is more trust. And so instead of us saying, well, if you sell that way, you're bad, we are now giving grace and leaving room for people to say, here's how we're doing it differently so we aren't on the bad side of the spectrum you've been seeing.
Yeah.
And could there be a world where every breeder who's selling online has a license number or has a registration number? Yes. There are states like Texas and Pennsylvania where if they are selling online, if they're selling in a newspaper, if they're selling anywhere, they have to put their license number. And that to me is a huge step in transparency.
Absolutely.
If we could get that to happen in more states, or if we could get more websites to require that, and then again, have the websites checking up on it.
Yes.
We often see breeders claim to have a license and they do not.
Yeah.
These are all positive steps that we could see happening. And we have heard from people in that space that those are steps that they think would also be helpful, because a thing that we all have in common that no one likes to talk about is the unlicensed puppy mill problem. Both sides know it's an issue, but both sides can't talk about it because they don't trust each other. And so when we're talking to brokers and to breeders and to policymakers, like we can add that nuance and we can add that we think registrations would be helpful because my God, they would. So looking at it outside of the box too is helpful. But
and back to consumer education. So I think part of the question was, can we do that within our existing structure of laws? Like, can we do this without being legislative? And to me, it's, again, the more we can talk to consumers, and consumers can start to demand of a website. I am not buying unless you've got a license number or a registration number. Like you have some system to vet these sellers so that I know. So like I said, we go to events and we talk to people who are frustrated because they want to do the right thing when they're buying a dog and they don't. So like as soon as those people start making a racket to the people who are selling the dogs saying, I need you to be more transparent because I need to know where my money is going. To force that change from the consumer level instead of a law that says now we have to be, because again, we've seen it's too easy to skirt the laws.
It's like consumer pressure. It does a lot. Just ask Disney. So
absolutely,
it's true. It's true. That's. I mean, it is. And passing a law, businesses will skirt laws. I mean, it's
a spirit thing.
We can find ways around it. And so when it's consumer driven, when it's affecting their bottom line, that's when they're going to be more motivated to make the change.
And I think that's a great point. And that's why advocates need to switch how they're talking about it. So it's, again, it's still don't buy online, don't buy in a pet store. Cool. Got that message. Thank you. However, is it bad to focus on transparency on pet stores and websites as they exist, right? So if there's transparency for the consumer, stop telling them don't. Let's go to those sources and say, okay, pet store A, if you say you're not buying from puppy mills, prove it. Let's do transparency. Let's throw it all out there and let's figure it out. You know, that's going to help the public. And if there is a pet store saying we only buy from the best breeders, here's a list of them. Okay, thank you. That's what we're asking. I mean, while the greater scope is to be asking to not end, whatever, not buy puppies, that's not helpful. So we're just trying to figure out in the world that is currently existing, how do we keep making positive changes? And communication is key. Community is key. And getting out of the silo that you are currently standing in is very important. Hearing different perspectives.
Preach, preach, preach.
Can you elaborate on your quarterly inspection audits? What are some key findings you've uncovered through this process, and how has this process changed since you first began?
Ooh, yeah.
She's
wow.
talking to you, Alexis.
A loaded question.
We started these in 2022.
Yeah, we did. And when that started, it was still like listing out all of the violations because, like, well, we run transparency, and that's how we thought we could get it to people, was like so people could know what dog and cat breeders and dealers, what was happening at their facility. Because for people who may not know, the USDA doesn't just inspect dog and cat facilities, they inspect a range, exotic animals, guinea pigs, rabbits, birds, yeah. But like for the relevancy of like our conversation, we do focus on dog and cat breeding and dealing facilities. We will get to small animals eventually. But yeah, so it originally started off as a list. We'd list out kind of the violations that people were getting. We'd separate them by state because we kind of thought, I think people really want to know what's happening in their state. So you could go to Missouri and see what the breeders in your state, if you're in Missouri, what was happening there. And then I think about, what was it, a year ago? I don't know.
It was about
like
2 years ago. Well, 2 years ago, we were like, this is too much work for us.
Yeah.
Because we were listing every violation.
Yeah.
And it got to be a lot. So we started looking at the types of violation.
Yes. Yeah. So we've kind of evolved into a place where we're, well, for a little bit, it was like separated out by direct, critical, non-critical. And then we realized, oh my gosh, there's so much non-critical. Like, I'm talking like 90% of violations per quarter, it's just non-critical. And for those who don't know, or maybe need a little more explanation, non-critical is often seen as a violation that doesn't directly affect the dog. Some of them can probably be argued. I don't want to say all of them because some of them we've seen we're like, well, this could be, but it's just a lot of like paperwork stuff is what we're seeing. And so we're like, well, do we really need to list out all of those and make the report so long? And the worry was that people weren't reading them because it's like, it's a lot of information. And so we thought that focusing on the critical and direct, which are violations that directly affect the health and welfare of animals, that was more important to show the public what was happening at that point. Like, what was that 10% of violations looking like? And so now how we've evolved our audit, now we call it an audit. It's no longer a report because we are analyzing. I'll get to that. But we are listing out the breeders that are getting critical and direct violations, because critical violations are like systemic problems, like long-term, this is a problem in your facility. And then direct violations are ones that a inspector sees when you go to a facility and you're doing an inspection and they're limping, or they have an incision, like an owie somewhere, and that's like directly at that time affecting the welfare of the animal when the inspector's there. And so those are kind of important violations that we're like, people really need to see these. So we do list those out. We list out those violations, the name of the breeder, how many animals they have, and then we go a little bit further and we do an analysis. We'll do an analysis of the non-critical because that's still kind of important. We want to know what type of violations someone is getting in those non-critical. And so we'll list out what the most common violations are. And so they end up being like veterinary care. But we also do an analysis of everything and show people what are the most common violations that breeders and dealers are getting each quarter. And this is essentially like talking points for people so that they can understand the large picture of what is happening in these USDA licensed facilities. So we call it an audit now because we are really analyzing what is happening and not just telling you a list of people that got violations. We want you to have the information, have the talking points, and know like, hey, if veterinary care is the most common violation happening in these facilities, maybe we need to address that with our legislators or address that with the USDA. So yeah, sorry, long-winded. That's kind of how our quarterly audit has evolved, what it's evolved into. I guess I kind of, in the long run, kind of like wraps up that question into a long-winded explanation, sorry. But our key findings, really, I do want to highlight, I kind of mentioned them, was that we're really seeing that veterinary care is something that facilities are struggling with. Cleaning and sanitization is also a major problem. And so is record keeping, which is kind of an important thing and I think could lead to bigger things. it's more of like a thing like, oh, you didn't document if your dogs got their vaccinations, which is like, well, that could be a direct or a critical, more systemic thing if you're not giving your dogs consistent vaccinations, as is in your veterinary program of care. So I think those big findings, more of like the violation, but we also did a year audit, our first audit of all of these quarters, because before we were just doing each quarter we gave information about what was happening, and then we decided last year that we're like, well, maybe we need to do really the big picture thing, and so we did an audit of all that happened in 2024 with these USDA licensed dog and cat breeding facilities, and some of the big things we found were like, what was it? Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, like they are getting the most violations. I guess I should probably look this up, but I think it was Ohio and Pennsylvania. For the breeders inspected that year, they had the highest percentage of violations as compared to other states. So like, whereas like Missouri gets that bad rep, and we've talked about this, they only had like 3% of their inspected USDA licensees get violations. I will caveat that the state inspections look a bit different, but that's what we're seeing. Like, so if the USDA standard is like the subpar minimum standard, and these other states are really failing even to meet that minimum standard, like that's what this audit is helping with, pinpointing those states that are even struggling with the minimum standard, whereas Missouri might be doing a little bit better with the minimum standard, but still struggling to meet their higher bolstered state standards. So that, I guess that's a little like key findings, long-winded, sorry, like lots of information, but I think that's what's made this audit so fun, is to get those big pictures and get these conversations out that aren't really being talked about, because Missouri gets a lot of attention, but what about Wisconsin? What about Ohio and Pennsylvania? Like, yeah, sorry. Took over that.
Don't apologize. That's amazing. And I think it speaks to, again, the difference in the work that we're doing. We're not just doing data collection.
Yeah.
We are doing data analysis and then following that over time to see where it leads, which is crucial, because data collection is easy and assumptions based on that collection are easy. Yeah. But that's not, we're not interested in the easy.
And I'm going to ask a question that we get asked a lot. And it's not an easy question. How is our list different than the Horrible 100 list? Because we get asked that a lot. And we haven't ever addressed that officially. And I just think that maybe we should.
Yeah.
In the sense that we are technically still producing information.
Yeah.
We don't do a list.
So
right. So like you said, how is our list different than that list? And we don't really do a list.
It's an audit now.
It is an audit. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, because in the past we started in that list fashion.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Not inspired by, but that's just kind of how people did things.
Yeah.
And then it did transition more into an analysis, because we are realizing, be kind to people, be ruthless to systems. Like, how is the system allowing this? How can we fix the system?
Yeah.
And so I kind of wanted to just say, like, that's the goals of the lists or the audit is different from each organization. So what we are trying to accomplish with our quote unquote list or our audit is different than what other organizations might be wanting.
Yeah.
With their
I have an answer. I guess what makes ours different from like the lists that are out there is, I do think that I guess the kindest way I'm going to be able to put this is, the other organizations want to show, I think, the public what the worst of the worst looks like. Whereas with our audit, we want to get the whole picture. We want to understand where are the problem areas based on the full scope. And so that is why we analyze everything, because I think it's a lot harder to put out these lists and be unbiased, because I mean, Missouri has the worst reputation, and so they might end up having more breeders, but is that really what the data is showing? Is the data showing that more breeders are getting those violations in Missouri, or are they in other states? So I think with the audit, when we're really broadening our lens and we're looking at everything, it takes maybe the bias out of it, and it it just gives people a real perspective of what exactly is happening. It's because we're coming at it with data. We're not telling you because we handpicked these names and thought these were the worst of the worst. It is just, this is what is happening. Yeah, I don't know. Does that?
No, can I ask a question about the horrible 100 list? And maybe we don't know the answers. Yeah. But so this is 100 breeders is put out every year, correct? Of the 100 worst breeders in the country.
That's awful.
That is.
Oh my God! I know I said it too, the worst of the worst, but I'm like, but it's so biased.
But that's how it's presented, right?
Yeah.
These are the 100 worst breeders. 2024's list of 100. 2025's list is just updated to take off ones that we think are a little bit better and put on new ones.
So this is why education and media literacy matters, because the group that puts out that list, they say it is a sampling of some of the worst facilities in the country. So they are telling you it is a sample. These are examples. Okay. They are not saying these are the 100
We're not ranking 1 to 100.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when the headlines come out and the press releases are going out, the press releases are written and the headlines are written, so it sounds like these are the worst 100 puppy mills you will ever encounter in your life.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm envisioning. Like, I have a list of X thousand breeders.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take the top 100 and here's my list. But it's not that. No. It's just here are 100 not so great breeders in the country. But the perception, once it's out into the wild, is this is number 1 through 100.
Yeah, and the headlines read differently. Where like when our national audit went out, it was truly like a national audit. A study was done into dog breeders, and we were able to come up with percentages that we can measure. The other way, with the list of the worst, it is putting a bullseye, a target on 100 people every year, whether or not, with no context, with no nuance. And so even it was like 4 or 5 years ago, there was a breeder, excuse me, in Nebraska that was on the horrible 100 list. And we had shared the list, and they were messaging us. And they were like, how dare you? A tree fell on my house. There was a storm. I had a hole in my roof. Like, we were in the process of fixing it.
Yeah.
We got a violation. And they were explaining themselves to me. And at the time, I was like, okay, well, I didn't make the list. Talk to somebody else. I didn't have much empathy for them because I was like, well, it's your job to fix that. You didn't, without thinking, I know how insurance works. I know how all of that, how long that process takes. I had no sympathy or empathy for that person. That's what some people lead with. The zero empathy, the naming, the blaming, the shaming, the photos, the worst of the worst. Yeah. We're really trying to get the conversation back to, here's the systemic problem. Yes. And here are the point areas. So if Wisconsin has an issue, let's talk about Wisconsin. Let's see if we can make their state rules better. Yeah. We're trying to find real solutions, while I think a lot of the other organizations are doing the media, like, let's get out there. It is a little bit of fundraising. It's a little bit of education. It's a little bit of policy. Like, I think they have different motivations. Yeah. Where we are very much like, how do we get to the root of the problem? How do we solve the root of the problem?
Looking at history of data, not just, oh, this person in 2025 had these horrendous violations, because I think that happened this year. Someone got in the list, and then we found out behind the scenes that I think a significant their significant other passed away, and some things slipped, but before that had a clean history. So like, that's also the problem when you don't look at everything. You don't get that context or take the time to like have that empathy. I guess we don't get the full picture, but
and that's why we look at 5 years. We really try to, when we're advising people who email us or when we're putting people in our database, like, what does that 5-year history look like? Because you could have been bad in 2013. You could have had violations for 10 years back then, and now you've learned, and now you're doing better. I don't really know what the line is where someone would feel comfortable buying from a breeder with violations, but we really think like giving people the chance to do better and the chance to fix their reputation after one bad inspection or a few bad inspections. Like, I think there's room for that. Anyway. thanks for entertaining my awkwardly hard question.
No, I think it's what people need to hear. We're here to have the tough conversations and hopefully help people maybe think a bit more about what they're seeing in the media and how they're talking about these things.
And it's not necessarily bashing what other groups do.
No.
It's just making people realize there are always motivations behind the work of others, behind our work. And our motivation, we talk about it all the time. We are curious. We want to get to the answers. We want to know the full scope of the problem.
Yeah.
And we're still trying in the moment to fix things that we have the control to fix. We can't just end puppy mills today. If we could have, we would have. And so we're trying to really find all those nuanced ways to keep attacking the problem.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I have a question about these Benji podcasts. I just gotta know, does anybody else get chill bumps, goosebumps when listening to the intro to these podcasts, or is it just me? Could just be me.
It's definitely not just you, Shannon. It's definitely not just you.
Jump scare for those watching. Hey, Jelaine.
Oh, yeah, right. Jelaine has joined the chat.
I have
edited herself right in.
Yeah.
I'm not actually here. This is photoshopped.
AI, don't believe the thing we're saying right now.
That's why she has 6 fingers on each hand.
Yeah. Anyway,
Sorry, we digress.
The intro is honestly one of my favorite parts of the podcast. Mindy.
No offense. No offense to the guests. The quality content we're serving up week after week.
No.
Jelaine's like, I listened to the first 30 seconds and then I
don't
just
care what
push
you
stop.
people
So I really like it because Mindy just kind of came to me one day with an idea, very loose.
Very loose.
I think you sent me an email and you were like, here are clips. I want it to be like us and the news.
Yeah, just that it was basically like, how can we get it to show the news reporting what we do?
Yeah.
Because that's what we do, right? We get our work in the news.
Yeah.
So you did a beautiful job of not only clipping together all these pieces, but you found like the best background music where it just sounds like important and official. And yes, I do get goosebumps.
Yes.
And people probably, I don't know if we've ever said this, but we made Devon's episode accessible to Amish families. So we had set up a call-in number so families could call in and listen to what Devon was saying, listen to what I was saying and how we could communicate.
Yeah.
I left the intro in and they were also, I don't want goosebumps, like they didn't say those words, but I heard from a few people who were like, I had no idea what you guys do. Like they hear about us and that sounded very important to them. So they could hear like the news reporting.
Yeah.
So it's cool. Like that's how we wanted it though, right? It's like leading up because we think the media plays an important part in education. So you did a great job with it.
Yeah. That was one of my first journeys into video editing. So
and look how far you've come.
But that's it. Like, that's what I wanted. Like talk about that. Because we haven't ever really, you were just one day like, I want to make videos for our volunteers. And then you were like, I'm going to learn video editing. And you sat down and spent time learning how to edit videos.
Researching software.
Yeah. Become a tech whiz. Amazing.
And then you fell into editing our podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah. All roads lead to podcast. Yeah, it's been really fun. It's I like learning new things. I always have, especially creative things.
Yeah.
So this has been really fun.
Yeah.
Really fun, especially with all y'all by my side to go along with my wild ideas so I can practice my skills.
Many TikTok videos ensued because of this.
Yeah.
Please check it out.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah. No, we love the intro. We love the outro. We love Jelaine's editing skills. And so this episode too is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Because once it airs, you read the questions to us to make it easy.
Yeah.
Once it airs, you're actually inserting everybody's answers and it's audio and visual, which I mean truly blows me away. Because like I could not do what you do. But the fact that people are watching us and hearing things and able to just listen on podcast format's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you, Jelaine, for being so amazing and so creative.
Thanks.
Yeah, and listening to the intro is gives you chills, but also like watch it. If you're somebody who normally listens to us on like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or however you listen, just for once, just like hop onto YouTube and just watch the opening, because it's really cool that way too with all the
Jason
clips.
said it's a completely different vibe because he normally listens at work.
Ooh, yeah.
And there was, I think it was the episode with Gus and Carson. He wanted to watch the chaos.
Oh, that was a whole different
That was
vibe.
fun.
Right. And then he was like, oh, it is different watching you. He had no idea what our setup really looked like. Like, he really didn't.
Yeah.
Because he listens. And he's like, it's just different watching you guys because of how we communicate and the moves and like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, watch us on YouTube a little bit.
Yeah.
Shake it up. We know some people like put it on while they're cooking or, you know, at the end of the night. So. Well, do we have any things we want to end on? Please keep sending questions if you have them, because we compile them. We want to answer them. If it's a really interesting thought, we might do a whole episode on it.
Yeah. Right.
But I will say, man, we had a lot of questions about canine care.
Yes.
A lot. I know that Dr. Crony is happy to join us in a future episode, and I think that'll be cool for people to hear from her specifically and the Crony Research Group what that looked like.
Yeah.
What do these studies look like? How are you studying transports? We can ask her the question about the puppies in the pet store study.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be a really cool episode in the future.
Look forward to that one.
The questions really do help us know what people want to hear, because otherwise we're just talking about what we think is interesting. But the question, so like you mentioned, we get a lot of canine care, we get a lot of veterinary type questions, or maybe that's just me that has those questions. But like, so we have talked about like, maybe we can have a veterinarian on, like it gives us ideas for topics and guests that people are interested in hearing about, or something we say might launch someone thinking down a different path that we hadn't thought to explain or go down. So it's helpful.
Yeah. Well, thank you for tuning in this week. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please reach out to us. Follow us on all of the things.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you learned anything or you liked what you heard, send a donation, because we would love that. And we'll catch you next week. Bye.